Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. Welcome once again, one and all, to the SYN Shop live stream. I am, of course, the Mighty Pong.
This is Zenify.
And tonight we've got a special guest. We got Brian with us. He is a minifigure customizer, freelance designer and customizer who does work for Diamond Select Toys. But tonight he's here on his own. He's here RHODS, as the kids say, or they used to say in the 90s. But Brian, hello. How you doing tonight?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me on.
Outstanding. So we're going to talk to Brian here in just a quick second. But before we go into that, I just wanted to give you guys a quick little update on the shop. Now, the SYN Shop is a maker hackerspace that's located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, what in the world is a maker hackerspace, you may ask, as well you should. Well, we offer the tools and equipment that you can use to make pretty much whatever you can think of. We're kind of like a gym club, only with tools instead of exercise equipment, because that's more fun to mess with anyway. At any rate, we are currently in the middle of moving, so we are not 100% open, but we do have some of our members who are holding the shop open for limited use. Now, if you, and my dog likes it too. So if you're in the Las Vegas area and you'd like to help us get it back in action, or you just want to stop by and check out the place, you can join our Discord and find out all that and much, much more. Now, how do you do that, you may ask, as well you should. To join our Discord, you can hit up synshop.org/Discord to find the latest information on the shop, and to make sure you're notified of future events, including virtual ones just like this, you can join us at meetup.com/Synshop. And with that, I guess let's go ahead and first of all, just by way of introduction, you are not currently a member of the shop, so usually my normal questions are more along the lines of how'd you find out about the shop, so on and so forth. I guess you just found out about the shop.
Yeah, I heard about the shop from various people. I haven't had a chance to stop in, but I like the idea of having a place locally where you can sort of make your own stuff. I understand you have 3D printing there, laser cutting, or like water jet cutting, things like that.
We got 3D printing, we got laser cutting, we've got a gigantic shop bot. You can CNC cut an entire 4x8 sheet of plywood all at the same time. Just all at once.
I've been doing stuff kind of by hand, the old-fashioned way, sculpting, but I would definitely like to dip my toe in 3D printing. I've got a couple pieces that I've 3D printed through kind of commercial websites, but I've never actually gotten good enough at the software to render my own stuff to 3D print.
Did you did you 3D print like minis and stuff like that, or you talk like just other types of parts?
Yeah, like parts for the minis. It'll kind of make sense when I bring some of those out. Yeah.
So I guess really we should jump into it then. For the uninitiated, actually that reminds me. One of the things that I noticed when I was getting ready for this show is when you say minifigures, there's quite a few different meanings to that. Because you could say minifigures as in like Lego minifigures. You could say minifigures as in like the pewter ones, like Warhammer. So what particular brand are you into?
So the particular brand of minifigures that I use are called Minimates. They're by a company called Diamond Select Toys. I'll pull out one here. So this is Cyborg Spider-Man.
Here, I'll throw it up on the screen. There you go.
This is Cyborg awesome. Spider-Man. There are 14 points of articulation. You can see the scale. They're about 2.5 inches tall. And they started out in the early 2000s. There was another series called Kubricks that were overseas. They had, but yeah, obviously Lego minifigs are the ones that most people would be familiar with. These are a little bigger than Lego, but are a fairly close scale. Sometimes you can swap the accessories across. But kind of the thing I like about them, and that made me like them from the start, I've always kind of been into customizing action figures. When I was a kid, I would take apart G.I. Joes and sort of recombine them and things like that. But I liked that Minimates, when they first started out, have the base body that's sort of a bit more articulated than a Lego figure, so you can pose it a little bit better, do different things with it. but it was the way I described it, they're partsy. Like they come with different accessories. So you could see I've got a bin here of a bunch of half-complete figures because I loot them for different parts.
That makes sense.
Like here's like Doc Connor's the lizard from Spider-Man. You can see he's got this like a trench coat. He's got a tail. He's got lots of different pieces. And what's cool about him is the different parts come off, so they're swappable. So you can take the legs off. You can take the head off. They've got different hair pieces, so you can swap that around. So it's kind of a fun series because they're in the same way as Legos. They're a little bit extensible across the line. You can swap different parts or whatever. Diamond started out with like the Marvel license. I'm a big Marvel Comics guy, so it was kind of a cool fit to be able to have smaller figures that don't take up as much room if you collect a lot of them. Like if you look at a line like Marvel Legends, they're a 6-inch figure. They really start to take over your house if you're collecting a lot of them. But the 2-inch figures, they're a little smaller, so you can have a cabinet, satisfy your itch for collecting, and it's not going to take over an entire room. So I had made that series back in probably the late 2000s, 2010s. There were some guys that did like an online, they called it Custom Con, where it's sort of amateur customizers would put together figures and then they'd present it as this sort of faux like toy convention online, so people kind of check out the work each other did. And I was fortunate enough, I got one of the people from Diamond Select Comics actually reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in doing paint prototypes for the company for their actual their figures that they'll do when they're going to release a series. They'll do actual paint prototypes that they send to the factory in China to kind of match up when they're doing those, use them for promotion at actual conventions and things like that. So it was a pretty cool gig to get. So I was actually doing the real figures for the company. So I got to kind of see what was going to come out about a year before it came out.
They would come to you and say, okay, we want to have Cosmo the dog, or it would have been a humanoid figure. We want to have Moon Knight. And so then you would go off and you'd be like, okay, I need this part and this part, and then I need to make so on and so forth, like you'll show us in a little bit, I'm sure. And then you would give that to them, and they would use that for the prototype for what they would make?
Exactly. So I'd work with the designer that works for the company. His name is Barry Bradfield, and he'll design. They'll do a series of, usually it's like 6 or 8 figures in one wave, and he'll make the line plan for that, and he'll design the characters, and then I'll get the plans for it basically. So he'll design the artwork that goes on the front. So these particular figures, they're done with a combination of pad printing on the block figure and then painted sculpted pieces. So this is Colossus from X-Men during the Avengers versus X-Men series. So you can see the face, the body, since those are flat surfaces, those are pad printed. And then the body part, or the armor part, is painted. So what I would get would be, I'd get a set of like Adobe Illustrator files for the artwork that would go onto the body, and then I would get they would do actual 3D printed prototype pieces of the body parts that came from China, and I would get those and I would hand paint those, and then for the pad printed part, what I do is I use water slide decals. So
I was actually about to ask you that. Okay.
So I'd print those onto a sheet of water slide paper like this, and then I'd trim them out and put them onto a base body. So I'd prime the base body, I'd paint it whatever color it's going to be, and then put the decals onto it, and then paint the other pieces. And by the end, I've got like an assembled prototype of the figure as it was designed, and that's kind of how they end up looking. So like a base body would look like this. It's just a blank white or flesh-colored minifigure, and I've got like a whole bag of these since I do the prototypes for them. And I'll
I was just about to ask you what they look like.
Well, I was just gonna say those just look like straight up things I would just be playing with already.
Yeah,
like a bunch of ninja men or something.
Yeah, it's cool because you can kind of do, if you're just doing customs, you can do whatever you want with it. You can paint it, some color, or you can accessorize it basically.
They look like they just look like the default thumbs from Spy Kids, like the thumb enemies from Spy Kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I'll kind of show this. I've got several bins like this that are just full of
holy crap,
full of figures. And they've got they'll use like common hair pieces. So since the hair pieces come off, like if I needed this hair for a different person, maybe I can just paint it brown or black or something like that and throw it on a different guy. Or like the capes. Here's Thor. He's got like a different cape, and you can use that on someone. So you can mix and match and make sort of like in the community that customizes, they call them quick customs. So you just sort of mix and match the pieces and then build a character that you're after. Or you can go to the lengths that I do where I sort of make my own new parts or whatever.
What type of paints do you use when you do that? Do you use like just like standard brush type painting on, or are you like mass producing any with?
So we have a child on the field there. There you are.
And so like you're not like spray painting in like mass or anything. I guess that's what I was gonna eventually get at.
Oh yeah, so basically I mix those and put them in just like an airbrush and spray. But I'll start out with like Vallejo makes a really good base like colored primer. So these are the model color. So this comes in just like a little I don't know how many ounces this is. You can thin them with just like regular paint thinner. So I'll use like a rattle can for primer and prime the figure, and then I'll usually do 2 or maybe 3 masks. So I'll print similar to how like this artwork is laid out on the decal sheet. So for example, you can see here, I don't know if you can see it, there are a couple different colors. So the base color would be like a yellow, and then depending on how solid the color is and how, so I'll use like I just print those on like a laser printer. And if I'm using a real solid color like a red that isn't going to have a whole lot of dot to it, I'll print it on the printer. But if I want a solid color and it's kind of something that's a little bit lighter or isn't going to reduce very well on a laser printer, like I don't like to see a lot of a line screen on my colors, I'll print the line art for the decal on the print it yourself Avery clear label paper, like you'd use for envelopes or something. I print it on that, and then I'll trim it out like a frisket basically and put it on the different pieces and then spray a different mask color on it. So I'll lay down a base color. So I laid down the base color of red, and then I did a mask for the green, and I just laid it on there like a frisket, and I sprayed that color green. You can see the like the yellow line work right here. This is Mr. Miracle from DC. Face.
Wow, that looks good.
Yeah, so I sprayed the head red, and then I masked out the face mask part. And one little trick I'll do for faces, because the decal sheet is clear, instead of masking out like eyes and teeth and stuff like that,
right?
Try and get close so you can see it. I basically just get the white paint and I'll paint it in on some of the like really small areas, and it makes it opaque. And I just wrap the decal on reverse, basically. So it's kind of like masking cheat for little small parts like that. I'll do that for like colors.
But before we get too far away from it, you said something earlier that I didn't know what that meant, and if anyone else wants to get into this, I want to make sure that they can know too. Frisking. I have no idea what frisking is.
Okay, so Frisket is it's basically like an airbrush mask. So it's like an adhesive tack paper that you cut shapes out of, and then you apply it to whatever you're painting. So it's got like a low adhesive glue on the back of it, almost like blue tape that you like masking tape. You cut shapes out of it and you apply it to a surface that's already painted, so you can airbrush, and it's basically a stencil. It's Frisket film. Where I've got fine line work there, I'll kind of just cheat it and paint right onto the decal sheet with the Vallejo paint, instead of trying to, like, you can cut those fine lines if you want, but then you basically got a registration problem when you're trying to line up the decals to exactly where you mask the lines. So I find it a little bit easier on that fine detail stuff to just paint it in. I'll use like a fine tip brush like this, and then just paint it on there. Makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Somebody in the chat, we got Art Ninja Attack. She says, "Do you ever use blue tack for masking highly detailed areas?"
It's kind of it's not blue tack exactly, but like I said, it's Avery laser print like label film basically. So if you go to Home Depot, you can get let me see if I have some. So it's like just clear shipping label sheets. You run that through a laser printer with the artwork, and then you've got your sort of poor man's Frisket film. They make a liquid mask, Vallejo, or I'm sorry, it's not Vallejo, it's a company called Microscale, and they make a liquid mask that you can thin down a little bit and spray with an airbrush. I've had mixed results with it. It's okay, but sometimes it's a little bit tough to work with. The advantage of it is you can spray it onto the surface and then mask right there, and so you peel off the part that you want peeled off, and then your mask is sort of liquid applied onto there. But sometimes if you don't trim it exactly right, it'll peel off like bits of the part that you wanted to stay masked. So if I'm doing something that's that fine detail, I'll either just print it on the laser decals, or like I said, I'll cheat it and paint right on the decal.
Very cool. JL Madrigal 45 asks, "How long did it take to get comfortable working with such small pieces?"
Like I've always customized action figures, so when I was really young, when I had small fingers, I pulled together some different examples of work in progress, so you can kind of see the progression of how it goes. When I'm not painting or decaling, so like the artwork, like I said, is done with decal and paint. A lot of times there will be parts that I actually need fabricated, and so I work with it's called green stuff. It's like a two-part epoxy putty tape, and it comes in rolls like this, or sometimes you cut that, and you'll cut like however much you need, and then mix it together, and it turns green, and it has about an 8 to 10 hour cure time. It starts with a consistency of like stilly putty, and it starts to get a little bit more rigid. If you want, you can change up the mix of that a little bit to keep it a little bit more stiff or a little bit more soft when you're first working with it. And then I'll use just kind of sculpting tools like this. One of the tricks I have is you get some petroleum jelly and put it on the end of your whatever you're sculpting with, and that kind of helps smooth the stuff a little bit, so you can make like fine detail lines or things like that. Or you can make patterns like the sort of grippy part of an X-Acto blade is nice for like a chain mail texture, so you can kind of roll that across the putty and it makes a little chain mail texture on it. Or it's just kind of getting creative with whatever you need for the specific moment, making different textures, cutting into different shapes, things like that. And then it hardens after about 8 to 10 hours. If you need to cure it faster, you can use a heat lamp or a heat gun if you're really careful, but I try and avoid heat guns in general because they'll melt the plastic. I'll just hit it real quick with the heat gun or a blow dryer or something, but generally I try and I'll mix the putty and I'll let it sit for about a half hour to get it a little bit stiffer, but it's still pliable enough to make a, sculpt it into different shapes. And then I'll spend half an hour, 45 minutes doing the thing and then set it aside. And then by the next day, it'll be dry and ready to paint. You can sand it to some degree. You can drill it, things like that. You can cut it once it's dry. So that's a little bit of what I do. This is a figure that isn't a mini mate, but it's something I'm working on that is mostly sculpted. So it's Robot Santa from Futurama. I don't know if there are any Futurama fans.
Oh, okay.
So the majority of this is done in the green stuff, just sculpting, and then so I'll sculpt it, and then I'll prime it to see if the shape is exactly how I want it, and then I'll sand it a little bit more, and then I'll prime it again. So I'll go through a couple different cycles of sculpting, letting it dry, and then priming it, sanding it, just to get the shape exactly right. Here's an example of what I would do for Mini Mate. So there was a Donald Duck. They did the Kingdom Hearts series, the video game Kingdom Hearts. And one of them was the Tron World Donald Duck. And I won't do
so cool.
Duck. So you can see, like I sculpted. This was the top hat was a top hat from, they did a Peter Pan series, and this was from Michael from Peter Pan. So I used that top hat. I sculpted, kind of his head feathers, the glasses, and then his collar. I wanted bigger feet on him. So this is kind of a pretty typical example of how I would modify an existing mini mate to be a new character that I want.
How much was there in the very beginning? Like, what did you start with Scrooge McDuck, but he didn't have the hat, or did you start with the Donald Duck head, or where'd you start with that?
Yeah, so I started with Donald Duck, and I grabbed the hat from a different Mini-Mate figure, and then I sculpted